This is every level of Dana White favoritism explained part 2. Level 1 is still the absolute bottom. Fighters who are still bleeding for this company and getting treated like they're disposable. And for this level, I'm talking about guys like Val Woodburn, a landscaper with a 7-0 record who got the call to fight Bo Nickel at UFC 290 on less than 5 days' notice. No coaching team, no training camp. The odds closed at plus 1,200 to plus 2,003 highlight reel. After one mercy fight, he was cut. His job was to make Bo Nickel look good, and once that was done, he had no value. Then there's Isaac Dulgarian, cut in late 2024 after suspicious betting activity on his loss. The UFC didn't wait for an investigation. They just cut him immediately. If this happened to a level 7 fighter, they'd get lawyers and protection. Isaac got the door. Level 1 fighters leave the cage with broken limbs, so level 3 of the night bonuses. That's level 1. Level 2 is where you get fighters who are legitimately world-class, sometimes undefeated, but they've committed the cardinal sin. They're boring, difficult, or entitled. Management actively roots against them, hoping they lose so they can be cut. Muhammad Mokaev is the perfect example. 23 years old, 13-0 overall, 7-0 in the UFC. In a real sport, he'd be a title contender. In the UFC, he was fired. Let that sink in. An undefeated prospect released after winning. Dana's reasoning was behavior and style. Mokaev got into brawls with Manel Kape, treated staff poorly, and his wrestling style was boring. When his contract expired, Dana said, "The PFL is going to get a great undefeated guy. Good luck to him." Here's the contrast. Manel Kape was equally guilty in the brawls. He headbutted Mokaev and has used homophobic slurs, but Kape was kept. Why? Because Kape knocks people out. His chaos is marketable. Mokaev's chaos was annoying. Then there's Bilal Muhammad, the champion in the doghouse. Despite winning the welterweight title at UFC 304, Bilal gets zero promotional love. After his win, Dana looked miserable. At the press conference, Dana called a reporter a douchebag and said the card wasn't a barn burner. Bilal is the champion the UFC tolerates, while searching for someone to take the belt from him. Fighters like Mokaev and Bilal have to win 7, 8, 9 fights in a row to get opportunities that level 4 fighters get in 3. That's level 2, 30 through one thing. Availability. These guys answer their phones. They accept short notice fights. They save cards. They rarely complain about pay or opponents publicly. In exchange, they get frequent bookings, being cut. Kevin Holland is the perfect example. Between 2023 and 2025, Holland fought non-stop. Santiago Ponzinibbio, Michael Chiesa, Jack Della Maddalena, Michael Venom Page, and Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. At UFC 299, he welcomed MVP to the UFC. At UFC 302, he took Oleksiejczuk on short notice to save a main card slot. At UFC 307, he stepped in to fight Roman Dolidze when Chris Curtis pulled out. Here's the thing, Holland went 2-4 in his last 6 fights leading into late 2024. A level 2 fighter with that record would be cut without hesitation. But Holland is protected because he solves problems for matchmakers. He's the break glass in case of emergency fighter. He's the guy who always says yes. And for that, he's allowed to earn millions without ever holding a belt. That's the economics of being a company man. Charles Johnson is another one. Flyweight Charles Johnson fought 4 times in 2024. February, May, July, October. The turning point was UFC Denver. He took a short notice fight against Joshua Van, a highly touted prospect on a level 4 trajectory. Van was the favorite. Johnson knocked him out in the 3rd round. Instead of being punished for derailing a prospect, Johnson was rewarded because he saved the card. The UFC values the completed fight more than the individual prospect at the mid-card level. After that, Johnson got a main card slot against Sumudaerji. That validated his status as a reliable hand. The company man status is the safest place in the UFC. You don't have the pressure of the title like level 7. You don't have the threat of the cut like level 1. You just work. Dan Hooker, Angela Hill, they're the same. They take damage, they lose sometimes, but they're constantly rebooked in high-profile spots because they're reliable. That's level 3. Level 4 is where Dana identifies fighters early as potential superstars. They're granted a fast track through the rankings, skipping the shark tank that level 2 and 3 fighters must survive. Fight reels and minimize risk. Bo Nickel is the most obvious example. 3-time NCAA champion wrestler placed on the main card of UFC 300 in only his 3rd UFC fight. His opponents? Jamie Pickett, Val Woodburn the landscaper on 5 days' notice, and Cody Brundage. When critics questioned his placement, Dana defended him and said something rare. The rankings are all just marketing. Muhammad Mokaev fought contenders and got cut. Bo Nickel fought cans and got more airtime. Peyton Talbot is another one. Dana called him the future of bantamweight after destroying Cameron Simon and Giannis Gamori. Dana said, "If this kid can keep his head together, I can't wait to see him at 27." The UFC carefully matched him against strikers, avoiding the division's wrestlers. The 19-second knockout of Felipe Lima was perfectly engineered. Dana's reaction to Talbot's wins is night and day from his reaction to Bilal's title win. Talbot is being groomed for stardom. Bilal is being tolerated. And then there's Paddy Pimblett. 7-0 in the UFC sounds impressive until you see who he fought. Tony Ferguson on a 6-fight losing streak. Bobby Green, a pure striker. Michael Chandler at 39 years old who hadn't won since 2021. Paddy didn't fight a single elite wrestler. No Gamrot, no Arman, no Benoit Saint Denis. When Paddy controversially beat Jared Gordon at UFC 282, most media scored it for Gordon. Instead of a tough test, they gave him Tony Ferguson, the easiest fight in the division. By January 2026, Paddy was fighting for the interim title. He was ranked number 5. Arman was number 1. But the UFC chose Paddy for their new Paramount deal. Dana even said it. Smart business, not he's the best fighter. Smart business, that's level 4. Level 5 is for elite fighters who are undeniable in skill, but actively blocked from title opportunities because their victory would be bad for business. The promotion can't cut them because they are too good, so they're stuck in purgatory. Magomed Ankalaev is the king of level 5. Between 2023 and 2025, unbeaten in 12 fights. Wins over Thiago Santos, Anthony Smith, Johnny Walker. Clear number 1 contender at light heavyweight, but repeatedly passed over for Alex Pereira. At UFC 282, Ankalaev fought for the vacant title against Jan Blachowicz. The fight ended in a split draw. Dana was furious, called it terrible, and immediately booked someone else for the belt, leaving Ankalaev in the cold. When Pereira became champion, the logical challenger was Ankalaev, but Pereira is a striker and the UFC's cash cow. The UFC forced Ankalaev to fight Aleksandar Rakic instead. The ultimate insult? Khalil Rountree, ranked number 8, got the title shot over Ankalaev at number 2. Dana said timing. The reality was stylistic protection for Pereira. And then there's Arman Tsarukyan. December 2023, he knocked out Beneil Dariush in 64 seconds. At UFC 300, he beat Charles Poirier had 1 win against the number 12 guy. Arman had 3 wins, including the number 1 contender. Then came UFC 311 in January 2025. Arman was scheduled to fight Islam for the title. 24 hours before the event, he pulled out with a back injury. Dana didn't see it as medical. He saw it as betrayal. He replaced Arman with Renato Moicano, ranked number 10. After the event, Dana said he's not getting a title shot. He's going to fight his way back. You miss opportunities sometimes, and he did. The number 1 contender got injured, and Dana punished him. Arman beat Dan Hooker in November to prove himself again. But when the title became vacant, did Arman get the shot? No. They booked Gaethje versus Paddy instead. Dana said, "I don't give a shit what the number says," referring to Arman's number 1 ranking. That's level 5. The rankings don't matter if Dana decides they don't. Level 6 is where rules bend. Drug testing suspensions, ranking requirements, behavioral standards, none of that applies the same way because these fighters have star power or open new markets. Khalil Rountree is the most blatant example. Mid-2024, he failed a drug test for DHEA, a banned anabolic agent. Suspended 4.5 months, reduced to 2. In a normal scenario, a fighter coming off a suspension would fight a contender to regain standing. Instead, Rountree got an immediate title shot. Jamahal Hill said it was terrible for the sport. It makes rankings pointless. But Rountree promised a stand-up war with Pereira, so the UFC prioritized the aesthetic over integrity. Sean O'Malley is the poster child for level 6. After beating strikers and aging veterans, he had a no contest against Pedro Munhoz from an eye poke. Standard protocol would be a rematch. Instead, O'Malley jumped to fighting Petr Yan, the number 1 contender. That fight was controversial. 26 media members scored it for Yan, 0 for O'Malley. But he got the split decision, and Dana immediately declared him the next title challenger. Here's the protection. O'Malley avoided every elite grappler on his way up. At UFC 264, when his opponent pulled out, the UFC could have given him ranked wrestlers. Instead, they signed Chris Matinho, a factory worker with 0 UFC experience. O'Malley beat him up for 3 rounds. It was a highlight reel, not a competition. Compare that to Merab. Merab won 10 fights in a row to get a title shot. 10. O'Malley got it after 4 wins, 1 controversial. When O'Malley finally fought Merab at UFC 306, he got dominated. Then he got an immediate rematch at UFC 316 and got submitted in round 3. 2 losses to the same guy, but he still got that instant rematch. When asked about it, O'Malley said, "Thanks, Dana," and fist bumped him. Open admission of privilege. He has fought for a title 4 times, 2020, 2020, 2022, and 2026. No other fighter gets this many chances. After getting knocked out by Max Holloway at UFC 300, he beat Rafael Fiziev, 1 win, and got an interim title shot. Beneil Dariush won 8 fights in a row and never got a title shot. Gaethje wins 1 after being knocked unconscious and immediately fights for a belt. Dana said it himself. Me and Justin Gaethje as the first main event in the Paramount era is smart business. That's not merit. That's entertainment. That's level 6. At the top of the pyramid is level 7. These fighters have transcended the employer-employee relationship. They've become partners. They save the company millions by salvaging cards. In return, they get immunity from criticism, massive undisclosed bonuses, and complete autonomy. Alex Poton Pereira is the level 7 fighter of this era. His relationship with Dana is zero friction. At UFC 300, Pereira headlined when the UFC couldn't secure McGregor or Jones. He knocked out Jamahal Hill. At UFC 303, when Conor McGregor pulled out 2 weeks before International Fight Week, the UFC was in full panic mode. Pereira stepped in on short notice and knocked out Jiri Prochazka. At UFC 307, Pereira headlined against Roundtree to boost the Salt Lake City card. But here's where it gets crazy. After UFC 303, Pereira said he misunderstood a conversation with Dana. He thought he was getting a $303,000 performance bonus instead of the standard $50,000. When Dana realized the confusion, he just said, "Okay, fine, I'll give it to you." $250,000 handed out like it's nothing. That's more than most fighters make in 3 years. Dana summed it up perfectly. He's the type of fighter that fighters are fans of. He never says no. Pereira is the ultimate asset. Lethal, available, and compliant. He doesn't hold divisions hostage like Conor. He doesn't demand $200 million. He just shows up, knocks people out, and collects his check. And because of that, he gets whatever he wants. When he asks for a bonus, Dana writes the check. When he needs an opponent, the UFC moves mountains to make it happen. When critics question his opponents, Dana shuts them down. Pereira has fought 3 times in less than a year as champion. He's saved multiple pay-per-views. He's generated millions in revenue. In return, he operates with complete freedom. No questions asked, no criticism tolerated. That's level 7. That's the apex predator. And that's every level of Dana White favoritism with current fighters explained. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe.